Hello, good evening, and welcome to PM Express. Tonight, we're going to toss and turn the President's State of the Nation's address, which he delivered to Parliament in compliance with Article 67 of the 1992 Constitution. There are those who have described some of the President's statements as overtly ambitious, and then there are those who feel that this was more like a state of the future, more than a State of the Nation's address. We'll analyze all of these. The President, in the address, I will state some of the things he said, that in furtherance of the government's plan, he will undertake in the health sector the construction of an ultra-modern new teaching hospital for the University of Ghana Medical School. Start the processes for the establishment of regional hospitals in the Eastern and Upper East regions, and then continue work on the regional hospital project in Wa in the Upper West region. On economics, he stated his vision to sustain the growth rate at a minimum of 8%, in line with the goals of moving this country to full middle income status. There are more the President raised in his sessional address, and tonight I have with me Dr. Sule Garba, who is Senior Policy Advisor at the Office of the President, to help us deliberate on the State of the Nation's address. I also have in the studio to my immediate left Dr. Samuel Boame, who is leading member of the Forum for Governance for Justice. Dr. Boame has just told me that he was personally involved in the creation of the ISSP for government. So he has a lot of knowledge in economics to share with us on different aspects of investment and business as well. So it's great to have you. You can join us by text 1760 or post your Facebook comments on our Facebook wall, facebook.com/JoyNewsOnTV. Or if you are on Twitter, you can send us a tweet. Our handle is JoyNewsOnTV. And if you are accessible with WhatsApp with your tablets or phone, you can send us WhatsApp on our hotline 0544334722. And you're reminded that this is a WhatsApp number. You're not expected to call that number whilst we are in the middle of discussion. So, gentlemen, it's great to have you in the studio and glad to be here with you.
Thank you.
So let me start with you, Dr. Sule Garba. The President's State of the Nation's address for the first time, if I talk about the presentation, was made very succinctly from teleprompter, where he efficiently delivered the message that he had to deliver to Ghanaians. But my observation was that he was moving a little too fast.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to your cherished viewers. He, for example, began his address by already demonstrating to Ghanaians the dexterity with which he handles technology. And this is a hallmark of President Mahama. He has, in his generation, is the tablet generation, technology, and the opportunities was given to him to demonstrate this in an hour, 15-minute long.
Or 20, 1 hour, 20.
1 hour, 20-minute address. And the issue about being a little too fast, you could tell that the density of his address was getting to be a bit long. And the slight increase in pace was, in fact, to allow people to stay with him and to complete the whole bulk.
So it was a communication strategy to get everybody involved.
To get everybody involved, but also, I mean, as an excellent communicator that he is, in the last two presentations he's made, there was public indication that they appeared too short. When he talked to Parliament, especially on January 4th, which was the real rendition of the status of the nation as at the close of 2012. He intended at that time to go with brevity as opposed to read the whole thing. He had submitted a much lengthier, nearly 40-page substantive document to Parliament for Parliament's record, but then he synthesized it. And a lot of people felt, and genuinely too, that it was rather too brief. And he took on board this in order to be a bit more elaborate and also to set out an agenda for the next 4 years. So that necessarily created a rather lengthy presentation, and he was balancing people's, endurance in that process with a bit of speed.
Okay, so as a senior policy advisor at the Office of the President, I'm sure you can walk us through what went into the packaging of this statement, State of the Nation's address.
Well, thank you very much. 3 things went into the packaging. The first and the most substantive was the gauging of the public sentiment. In fact, since the election results were announced early December, he commissioned a fairly vigorous assessment of the mood of the nation, what are the issues which are resonating, and especially to assess among the broad majority of Ghanaians which are the issues that they wish their government to take on board. That was crucial because having campaigned on a party manifesto, and this is the second factor, there were a number of substantive things that had already been put out in the public domain, which presumably were appealing enough to earn him the overwhelming majority and victory. Majority in parliament and victory in the presidential elections. So the second aspect he had to take on board, in addition to sensing public sentiment, was his own, the NDC manifesto, what had already been put out there as the offer to the public. The third one, which was a crucial one that's actually still ongoing, was a very, very thorough and sober assessment of the economic situation, the dire straits that we are in right now, as he articulated, and to assess what is possible, what is the fiscal space that is left, given the economic crunch, in order to address some of the pivotal promises that have been made and the things that the public expect government to do. And so these 3 things went into a kind of balancing act. Mm-hmm. So he did not go full-blown with the same manifesto that he went to the elections with, although a substantial aspect of it is there. He needed to check with the mood and the temperament of the population to survey expectations, but also do so cutting our coat according to our cloth.
Okay, so let me switch to you, Dr. Samuel Boame. You listened to the State of the Nation's address, did you?
I did intermittently. As a lecturer.
Okay, so tell me your own assessment of the whole address, and then we'll move on the discussion.
Yeah, fine. The address, first and foremost, is to be seen as a constitutional requirement, as you just mentioned, in accordance with Article 67 of our 1992 Constitution. The President must actually present a State of the Nation's heart, if you like, address, which essentially is about telling the state, like an elder man in charge of a family or director of a company, as to where they are coming from, where we are coming from, where we are now, where you want to get to, and how to get there. This for
did this come out clearly for you in the presentation? Because other people will disagree that was clear.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. That's fine. That's how it's supposed to be to me. That tell us where we are coming from as far as Ghana is concerned with regards to all the 8 sectors or areas of human endeavor. Where are we now? Are we satisfying ourselves? What are the possibilities of what? Providing things for ourselves in the future. How do you go about doing that? If you ask me, fine. I think I also agree with somebody who may say the speech sounds a bit futuristic. We will do. As a man coming from the background of, let's say, strategies, I would expect him to analyze the environment for us, then both internal and external, then tell us maybe about his vision, okay, alongside the vision of the populace, okay, as a citizenry. Then from there, as a leader of the state now, he can now say, this is the way I want to take you there. Like Sule said, all to be heard, gauged by what the people are thinking of, expecting, their sentiment of the people, which he tried, actually he dwelled on so much. You said the speech was more of, at a point, issues of health, education,
social support, fiscal challenges.
He
covered everything, actually.
He covered everything.
He spoke about the private sector.
That was wonderful. He covered virtually everything. Which Sule also agreed that it's not too far from what? The manifesto. I know so much about their manifesto, and this manifesto, compared to other manifestos, other hot parties. When I saw it, it's maybe like, let's say, an extract of the manifesto, which is true.
And is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, the manifesto means if I should
because we were looking at the national state of the nation,
it's
and
a kind of
we do not expect
act.
that you will make it so much of a party statement than a national one.
Fine. A party statement is such a taking out, a coup from what people feel a party coming to government should do for us. So that is actually hot. Packaged into a manifesto.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong per se if maybe in a speech like this, he hammers some of those points. Okay.
Let me read a section of the part where he spoke about the fiscal challenges. He said that the challenge facing us now is misalignment of the expenditure categories in the budget, namely emoluments, wages, salaries, allowances, goods and services, including debt service and investment or capital expenditure. So I'll skip that and then continue where he said that this is attributable to the following critical factors. It is important to appreciate that the personnel emolument portion of the budget has more than tripled in the last 3 years, from 2.5 billion to about 8 billion this year. This has been mainly due to the single spine salary structure. I mean, this is an encapsulation of the problems the president sees as affecting the fiscal discipline of this country. Mentioning wage and emoluments, I mean, you are grounded in economics and business. Is it reasonable for the president to perhaps pass off the impression that the nation's purse is at its wit's end with meeting wages demands?
And salaries. Yeah, fine. Single spine, you all be yearning for it. As I just mentioned, my colleague, I know what happens in other countries, like let's say Scandinavia. They are far ahead of this issue of actually fitting job to wages and salaries, no matter where you are working. So they take the basic into account. So which is close to the SSS program that we have here, single spine team we have here. The only problem we have is that maybe our productive sector is not matching up with our expenditure domain. So there's going to be that big gap, and should therefore be a worry to anybody in charge of an economy like this. So there's nothing wrong paying people their due. The teachers, the police, the army, all those public sector workers, which even emphasize that they are is going to focus on people's thought. I think something like people's thought, government. Social sector, it's all about money. You can actually promote social sector without actually expenditure on that sector, which sounds as if it's consultative rather productive. So to me, just warning us in advance that as we keep on, let's say, asking for more wages, because I also know that people are yet to be put on it. And I'm not talking about Legon, what have you put on it. And we are quite sizable in number. If it be put on a single spine, it's going to be a very huge wages, slightly hot pairs for the government to bear. So for me, the emphasis should rather be on productivity. And we don't have any excuse as far as this country is concerned where we cannot produce to meet our expenditure and make our life more comfortable.
Right.
So it's just a warning statement from him, because it's happening already. We also know that maybe he's listening to the public when it came to, let's say, recent issues about allowances to parliamentarians. The issue was this big issue of paying parliamentarians wage, rent. People are collecting that, calculate that amount. Even this one, I heard somebody calculating it, multiplied by number of parliamentarians, multiplied by number of years.
Which is fair.
But it sounds very huge relative to our income generating capacity.
But is it not huge? It is.
It is. So the alignment is important. Like you just mentioned, cut your coat according to your cloth. it appears we are cutting our coat oversized as against the cloth we have on the board. So certainly you can either not have something that will not fit you or oversized.
Dr. Garba, on this particular issue, on the president's talking about fiscal challenges, down is the presentation, he made mention of the fact that we need as a country to do a rethinking of the wages in relation to our national competitiveness and related productivity issues. Okay. But he didn't clearly outline a strategy by which perhaps we're going to ensure that the public sector workers will be more productive to earn the income, to deserve the income they're asking for.
Indeed. Thank you very much for raising that issue. First of all, let me just clarify this issue about style and substance relating to whether he was addressing the state of the nation as it is,
or the state of the future, or
you know, in the style of doing these kinds of addresses, you can either start with a litany of all the problems and the challenges you have, and then proceed to the next chapter to try and solve them. The president chose a different style, to be a bit more interactive, to put out a challenge as a reflection of the state of the nation, and then to back it up quickly with reflections about the way forward. And so you need, if you want a clear chapter on all the status of the nation, you would need to recalibrate those, pull them out. But the style he chose was to kind of get the mind of Ghanaians focused at each chapter on where things are and the way forward. And mind you, this is a companion address after the last address on January 4th, which focused more on really a rendition of what has happened at the end of the 4 years. But back to the fiscal challenge. As we were saying in the first instance when we started this program, that part of the consideration was the manifesto. But in the manifesto, there was not yet a sober assessment of the reality of the economic situation. That has come in here. Secondly, on that major issue of wages, Doc is right. The president has consistently said that he is happy that through single spine salary structure, Ghanaians are earning substantially more, about 50% more.
But are they productive?
That's the point. That's the point. So he's not opposed to the principle of paying people a decent wage.
But it does appear that he was making the suggestion that perhaps we've got to the crunchy bit, because he made reference of the fact that the meat is now down to the bones.
Indeed. And he said that for two significant reasons, to say that the state, ordinary citizens of this country, especially poor farmers, have now made the supreme sacrifice of actually giving public sector wages nearly 70%, 70 pesos of each CD collected from the toiling people of this country, the real productive people. And he's basically challenging public sector workers. Is this not still enough? But at the same time, as they're getting 70% on every CD collected from poor people, the productivity is not commensurate.
And how will we as a country make the productivity commensurate with the income? That was not clear here. That's the point I'm making.
Two things. One is he's throwing a national challenge and saying that all stakeholders, minority, majority, opposition, governing parties, have to sit down with the other social partners to really settle a formula and set up a ceiling. In the US, they have ceilings to the point that when spending exceeds a certain level, Congress threatens to shut down the whole spending spree. So we don't play politics with it. But the second one, which he has outlined, is very, very pointed productivity enhancement measures in agriculture, in tourism, in industry, and especially focusing on the private sector. In fact, throughout his presentation, he kept moving back into private sector to tell Ghanaians that it is not all gloom, that there is an outburst of productivity increases in certain sectors. He talked about Kumasi Airport. He talked about the domestic airport. There is so much progress in productivity, especially in the private sector. But we're not seeing a commensurate productivity in the public sector. And he threw a challenge and said, we will soon have to begin to break up some of the conglomerates in the public sector that are not moving, water supply, for instance. He proposed in this that we would soon have to explore more decentralized forms of management that are more accountable in delivering services faster to ordinary citizens. He challenged citizens themselves that the lack of productivity, the complacency in the public sector is both a result of inefficiency, but also a result of lack of citizen engagement, to demand more accountability and push the envelope and say to Electricity Corporation, say to Ministry of Health, we are paying so much money in taxation to you as salaries. We deserve courtesy in hospitals. We deserve promptness in the rendering of services. These are all issues that he intends to tackle, but he's also throwing the challenge and saying to ordinary Ghanaians, get on this and be aware that when the next strike is being called, let's scrutinize what we're paying and what we're getting in return. Why is it that after paying 70%, we're still held ransom every day for more and more? That the meat is finished and we cannot start to chew the bones because ordinary citizens deserve better service.
Do you think we should, as a country, take this State of the Nation's address as the working document for the next 4 years?
Indeed, and this is the other uniqueness of it. I'm sure other presidents have aspired to similar length and depth, but what has been happening, and this is central to some of the things I'm starting to do with my colleagues in the policy coordination process, is to make sure that the State of the Nation address is sufficiently aligned both to the expectations of the people, but also to the initial platform upon which he won his presidency.
Yeah.
And to take it as the authoritative policy document, which will now inform very quickly the formulation of the budget in a couple of weeks.
And this is what's going to happen for this one.
And then subsequently, that very document is already being exported, as you will, into the National Development Planning Commission. And starting tomorrow, the Commission Secretariat, the Commission itself is not yet constituted. The Secretariat is starting to take it apart and look at how this document can serve as the guide and the framework for the next medium-term plan.
But if that is it, then I kind of quite share the concerns of CPP chairman Samia Nkrumah, who said there were no clear timelines. So if this is going to be a working document, wherein lies the timelines?
This is a very interesting concept. Timelines in planning do not come in your elaboration of broad vision program direction.
Where do they come then?
They come as the immediate successor step, because you start to set targets only when you know the envelope that is to meet your programmatic aspirations and goals. That envelope is going to be announced for 2013 in a couple of weeks. The instant the envelope is announced, then the people in planning from the sectors, every sector will be given a budget ceiling, given the financial crunch. Then the sectors start to align the goals with the envelope they have. You know, this business of cutting your coat according to your cloth. You take the cloth and you take the measurement of your goals, and then you set out the quantity of things that you can achieve in this year. And in doing so, you then set targets and milestones for those targets. So I encourage Honorable Samia and the colleagues to watch out. And this is what we talk about participation, that citizens must be engaged. These questions are the right questions. They may not be asked at the right times, but that when the president promises that from this point, budget will align itself with goals, and with the budget and the goals will come clear timelines. And he has already set up a team in his office to meticulously not just track the timelines when they emerge, but also to provide implementation support. Because the challenge that we have in this country is not a shortage of policies, but really a really deficient system of implementation. And that is what he intends to do.
Dr. Boame.
Yeah, I also expect when he asks whether this could become a working document, certainly it should become a working document. he just coming there as a captain of the ship, outlining the visions that the nation has. And therefore, in appointing various sector ministers, and I'm telling you, every aspect of this speech might have touched on some aspect of what? A sector ministry. If I were president, I would say now, as you listen to me, let's say road minister, the various roads that he says he's going to complete or initiate and complete, then it means that's a sign to the sector minister. If he comes to, let's say, hospital building, then it means the health minister must listen very carefully. Therefore, the health minister does not actually have to go back and think too hard. The thinking has been done for him. For me, my worry now is how to implement these things. If I just wrote somewhere that if everything said by the president should be implemented to date,
Ghana should be full middle income in 4 years.
It will be a paradise.
That's where my point is. Are these visions and statements, are they not too over-ambitious that as a country and as governments, successive governments, we set targets that are unachievable, that we cannot sustain, only to come to the next election year, and then we are grappling with exactly what did we say we will do, and where are we? So are these not over-ambitious?
Yeah, actually, ask that question, it's fine. I also remember he was saying a few things about by April, by June next year, so those elements could consider what? Timelines. That's where your question comes in, whether, again to my colleague, the ambitious nature of it. So at the point I was listening to the speech, I was wondering whether is it within 4 years? Given the nature of politics here, I'm telling you 4 years time is essentially 2.5 years time.
Yeah.
Because 2.5 years what is available for you to do the work. The remaining 1.5 is all about how beginning of all, if you like, campaigns. And the various worries here and there. So, in effect, if actually to be held, a very serene government, where it is left on its own to act, ministers do their work as appointed, as they are defending their vetting process, through their vetting process, I think it can be done.
It can be done. Dr. Garba, do you think the visions and some of the prescriptions are not over-ambitious?
Well, I do not think so. And also, as Doc mentioned, the very process of pulling it together was a highly consultative one. So the president and his team focused on, as captain of the ship, thanks for the term, on the bigger visions and the goals. But then
bigger achievable visions? That's why I want to pin it down.
Yes.
That these visions, are they achievable?
You've got to challenge this nation. The vision of doubling energy generation is an imperative if this country is to remain alive, let alone grow. We are all facing the crunch of dumsor, in part because as a nation over the last 20, 25 years, we ignored the 10% increase in demand for energy every year. And so we have grown so rapidly to the point where what we established as an optimum energy level 15, 20 years ago is what we're still operating by. And therefore, to clean up the backlog and get ourselves into a comfortable margin of relative surplus energy,
we need to double.
We need to double our generation. And he's got a plan to double that generation. That plan which suggests that the public sector alone cannot carry the billions that is required to double the generation. The private sector is already being lined up through a number of initiatives that will come on stream. We already have Asogli. Within a very short time, a private individual with his foreign partners are producing over 200 megawatts of electricity. He talks about bringing in new and innovative mechanisms to finance a greater acceleration of healthcare delivery. The University of Ghana Medical School, the first of its type in this country, is through a public-private partnership. It is not burdensome on the public purse. So that medical school and its adjoining 600-bed hospital will finish on time when it starts, because it is through a different mechanism of financing than through the public sector. And so it's an ambitious, challenging agenda, but this country must be challenged with ambition, with vision. And as Doc said, the ministers are now further challenged by raising the bar and saying not only will he demand accountability from them, the citizens will demand accountability from them. And the state will make it possible for civil society open up the space for them to engage in this process.
Well, you're watching PM Express, and my name is Stephen Enti. I'm here with Dr. Sule Garba and Dr. Samuel Boame, and we're discussing the State of the Nation's address. The president summed up the president summed up his presentation in 4 themes. 1, putting people first, a strong and resilient economy, expanding infrastructure, transparent and accountable governance. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take these step by step, one after the other, and see the way forward. You can join us by text 1760. Post your Facebook comments on our Facebook or facebook.com/JohnNewsOnTV, and send us a tweet at Joy News on TV. Our WhatsApp is also active, 0544 334722. We'll be right back. Went on the break. The president in his presentation said that his government, or him as the leader of the government, will focus on delivering under the vital pillars of 1, putting the people first, and 2, a strong and resilient economy, 3, expanding infrastructure, and 4, transparent and accountable governance. So, Dr. Garba, I would like us to walk through these thematic areas stage by stage, starting with putting the people first. I mean, I won't go back into the areas that he mentioned, but you as a senior policy advisor, when you were advising the president on issues regarding putting people first, what did you tell him?
Actually, he more than us formulated the pillars. He's a captain of the ship, and these are the pillars upon which his grand vision rests. So it made our job easier. He said, look, I believe in social democracy. My party is a social democratic party. And therefore, the foundation of that entire enterprise of reconstructing this nation must be based on its people, on its human resources, on its private sector, on its civil society. And in doing so, he was doing it not just from the give attitude, but also from the building of capacity of the people. Investing in them in order that jobs can be effectively established. Providing them with the capacity through education, through access and quality education. He talked about a healthy nation requires a healthy people, improving health services, expanding access to health services. So that for him is the fundamental foundation of building a social democratic nation.
And focusing on the variables.
And focusing on the variables. But in doing so, he is saying that it is the people who, after all, run a resilient economy. If people are not happy, if people are not healthy, if people are not educated, you will have an economy eternally dominated by external forces.
So do you think that under that pillar 1, he was able to adequately capture all the challenges facing the citizens of this nation, and was he able to prescribe exactly what his government will do to resolve these challenges?
Maybe I'll let Doc answer that, because I was involved in it.
Dr. Boame, did you see that,
I heard that
appearing in
Yeah, he does so much on that, as my friend Sule has just said. He does so much on that, to the extent that he mentioned health, he mentioned the variables, so that in the end, to have job created for them. And once job is created, it's a means to an end.
Job creation is only one part of the things he spoke about under putting people first.
Yeah, yes. That can be interpreted in many ways. Because you have a job, you can provide for yourself. If you don't have a job, many things, you will not behave as a normal human being. Once you don't have means of what? Living. So for me, that's the way I interpret actually the issue of what? Creating job for the people. Because once you have a job, then all other things are hot, can be given to you, more or less. So he actually touched on that. As I said, I keep on going on and off. But it was a point that he mentioned, I thought I got 5 pillars, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he got
What was
4.
your 5th pillar?
I think I wrote something like education.
Education.
Yeah, it's under,
people.
Putting people.
Yeah,
first.
putting people
Yes.
first.
Okay.
Yes.
He plugged it under putting
Okay,
people
because
first.
he was speaking very fast, so
Yes, yes, you know.
So I put health, vulnerable, education. So for me, actually, I thought you articulated that portion very well. Putting people first, because I keep on hammering on that throughout all the other thematic areas.
Dr. Garba,
Yes.
I want to bring us back on track to,
Yes.
you know,
The various
putting people first. So we'll focus our discussion on
Yes,
putting
yes,
people
yes,
first.
indeed.
Let's talk about education.
Yes.
When he spoke about education, he made a couple of things. He said a couple of things. He said that the government wants to prioritize and expand access at all levels, and then aggressively address quality enhancement and outcomes at all levels, and then reward outstanding educational service providers to boost morale in the sector, and then work to improve gender parity, and then also encourage community participation in management of schools. I mean, this is one recommendation that civil society group Imani has always recommended, that our governance, our education system should encourage community participation in the management of schools where the community feels they own a part of the school. I didn't get clearly what the president would do specifically to make this achievable, to encourage community participation in management of schools.
Indeed, if you look at elsewhere, I believe in that same section, he also threw a challenge to restore the social partnership in education delivery by inviting religious bodies and the private sector. And that's a two-pronged approach. First of all, as you know, there is a long-standing structural arrangement where parent-teacher associations are involved in the deliberations of schools. He would hope to articulate the strengthening of this, but more than that is that other aspect where he stressed on the social partnership. As we speak, religious bodies who, as you know, from the longest while through our history, have been pivotal partners in investing in schools, in helping to manage schools, in instilling morality in schools. That process was somehow compromised when the majority of schools were brought under the public sector, and that role, that pivotal role they used to play, started to diminish. Private sector itself, in delivering greater access to education, which was part of this agenda, he invoked this partnership. That the investment that is required is so substantial that if we want to, again, as in the case of energy, accelerate access to, say, senior high schools, we need to bring in additional investment from these social partners. And it's doable. A lot of those social partners are ready. They're saying, give us a quota. We're a religious body. We want to be more actively engaged. 200 senior high schools, give us a quota. Would you let us build 20, 40? They're lining up. Same thing with the private sector. So a breath of fresh air in opening up the pot. And again, see throughout his rendition, he is moving between public, private sector, civil society, and saying that the space that needs to be occupied is large enough for all of these partners to come on board. So the quantum of these ambitious goals is not to be delivered entirely by the public sector. He's brought in a minister of education, nationally renowned for her conviction on quality. And that minister has already hit the ground running and saying, I want to focus on quality and on performance enhancement. As Doc said, the details will be seen in the meticulous plans that these sectors then come up with.
He also spoke about working towards standardization and affordability in schools. This sits in the face of the MPP's promise for free senior high school education, which was very much touted during the election period. Now, Mahama is saying that his government will work towards standardization and affordability in fees. What exactly is that? I mean,
that is a first step of sanitizing the fee environment.
How?
If you look at the graph of fees that are charged in this country, there's a whole plethora of fees. You can go from one school charging a certain amount to another school, doubling.
And how does he intend to standardize it? I mean, Adisado College will charge different, and Fansman will charge different. Maybe St. Peter's will charge different, and Benkum Senior High School will charge different.
There are issues associated with that. Citizens of this country must be able to have a transparent threshold fee that you know that senior high school costs X
so much.
across the country.
And he's going to ensure that. But
Absolutely.
how is he going to do that?
Well, he's talked about it in his State of the Nation address. The details are being worked out to create the parameters for standardization. Because you can't even talk about free SHS without knowing the quantum that you're dealing with in function of what are the standardized range of fees. Once the standardization occurs, then the state would look at it and say, okay, if this is the quantum, now, Mfasipim may have, additional bread and butter above and beyond the standardization. That would be a different matter. But every citizen will have a transparently understood fee standard that says SHS that is offered in this location costs X. And that in itself is a first step towards then taking a more critical look at even the free education notion.
Right.
In the Constitution, there is a requirement that every government is enjoined to work progressively towards free education. A process of working progressively...
I mean, the NDC didn't stop saying that.
Yes.
They use it as a major campaign message
but
that they will work towards making education progressively free.
Yes.
But I thought that...
And a step towards that...
Really.
A step towards that is to get the standardization right.
Okay.
So that there is a transparent... Because, again, you don't want to start down the road of the kind of the single spine salary that we entered, where all of a sudden we didn't map out where we were going. And now, market premium, everybody is saying, in order for parity, I want what he has. And then when I've got what he has, then he turns around and says, by the way, I want what he has now because there's a little bit of adjustment that is to be needed. So progressively working towards free SHS is to first establish the parameters of this standardization.
The president also, in promising that his government will go on expansion of infrastructure by building 200 new community day senior high schools, said that as part of the measures to put in place to get more teachers, the government will roll out a special sandwich teacher educational training programs targeted at unemployed graduates in preparation for the full implementation of access to secondary school education. I mean, I can't get it. Is it that government is going to target unemployed graduates and encourage them to go into teaching, or what?
In fact, a silver lining throughout his State of the Nation address is jobs, jobs, jobs. Every opportunity the president got, he threw in job creation. So in education, the deployment of 200 new community day senior high schools brings in its wake a huge demand for teachers. He did not say he will stretch the already exhausted teacher population. He said that will open the window for bringing in new teachers. So teacher training. And the sandwich that he referred to is to use existing capacities immediately. And instructions have started going out and saying that open up space, make sure that the existing facilities bring in sandwich teacher training. Unemployed graduates who are walking around can now be absorbed to do short sandwich courses to focus on teaching. But when he mentioned the 200 new high schools, as a young man, the first growing up, it conjured the image of the Kwame Nkrumah Education Trust schools. There were about 25, 30 of them. Standardized, same design, and the expectation is that we will soon see these, populating the country to ensure that what he talked about during the campaign, that what is fundamental right now are the thousands of students who finish JHS, who qualify, but they do not have space. So before you even look at making SHS free, is to provide optimum access for every child who qualifies to go into a higher educational
So
attainment.
would the NDC government ever make senior high school free?
Absolutely.
When would that be?
You know, the timeline is another matter. At least for now, he has said the first step towards it is to look at those costs, streamline them, open up access, and ensure that all who must be in SHS are in SHS.
So can you tell me if the NDC government is going to go into the 2016 election? That is, if you're going into 2016 election with the promise of a free senior high school, would you do that?
You're now going back to the campaign days.
I'm trying.
Yes, you're trying. You know, we're veering away from the state of the nation at this. I'll leave that to your speculation. What I do know as a policy coordinator is that the policy thrust is focused. And indeed, this issue is so challenging that it's one of the areas that he sought to do a bit more research and consultation because it's a popular aspiration of Ghanaians. It hits the chord with ordinary Ghanaians, and it's a matter that will be dealt with in that incremental manner.
It's a matter that cannot be ignored.
That cannot be ignored.
Dr. Boame, let's shift to expanding infrastructure. What do you hope to see as infrastructure, on infrastructure expansion in our country, and then we'll come quickly run through what the president said.
When you say infrastructure, these are mega projects.
Mega projects?
Mega projects.
What do you mean mega projects?
Normally infrastructure
like
beyond...
reconstruct the entire Tema motorway, which the president said will be
and
rehabilitated in 4 years.
Add more. Since 1965, that's the only one we have in the country. You know, very soon you see that there's a need for a high-speed road from here to Tamale, if not to Bolga. So infrastructure. I was going to say, when you mention infrastructure, for me, I always focus on roads. I think bring roads to every nook and corner of this country, and all other things shall be added. If you, let's say, construct roads that are pliable, motorable roads, to every nook of this country, you have solved half the problem.
Because economic activities will spring up.
Fine. The school, you can imagine.
Hawkers will come onto the street.
You have a school, like, let's say, I come from Ho. If there's a good road from Ho to Accra, people can come from Ho by train in the morning, school, and go back.
Or to work.
You just imagine this internal flight from here to Kumasi. Anytime I take it, I wonder, 35 minutes. So short. So it can be high-speed hot, railway, for instance. Or very hot, pliable road where you can take hot. Let's say this big buses. Then because of that, transportation cost become very less, small. Because transporting the, let's say, cement to Tamale, again, the cost is more of what? The nature of the road. Therefore, if you have the road again, that private sector that we are talking about, you are just opening up the regions for the private sector to go and establish the company there. And that's one of what, maybe, let's say...
So that's what you want to see?
For me, I want to see...
More roads, better roads,
I have nothing against
railways.
This government. She spent 4 years constructing roads to every nook and corner of this country. Americans call it in those days opening up the regions.
Dr. Garba, opening up the regions. Is that what the president is going to do in 4 years?
Yes.
And under
the transcontinental railway lines. Yeah. From the coast to coast. That opened Nevada, Wyoming to New York. Then in Canada, the Canadian Shield. Yeah. They used to have unplayable because it's a marshy area. But once there was a road, people actually moved there. It's like only being put there for the arm to follow. But everywhere, if you have vinegar barrels, nobody will go. Everyone will want to come to Accra to chase a good refuge, a few good roads. That's the case, maybe.
Dr. Garba, is that what the government wants to do?
And it said, and I quote, that I have clear plans for the roads and transport sector, which we will start implementing this year. These include the introduction of public-private partnership models on commercially viable routes along the western, eastern, and central corridors. Fine. Encapsulated in this statement are two things. First is a clear articulation of the plan. And secondly, is a division of labor between what can and must be funded publicly because they do not appear momentarily to be commercially
viable,
lucrative.
Okay.
And that which could be commercially lucrative, and all these roads that Doc mentioned in these great places, are being funded by road tolls. Exactly. They are considered to be commercially viable. Within 10 years, investment is mobilized, they are built, and then people are charged for it. But beyond roads, he focused on a significantly large infrastructure, which is energy as a strategic infrastructure. He mentioned that he is looking forward quickly towards the end of the year when Ghana itself will finish the construction of its own gas infrastructure from the oil, and that this gas infrastructure will spare almost a golden age of energy generation. This doubling of energy that he speaks about is not so ambitious if you think that by the end of the year, Ghana will have the gas production that will allow the firing of several gas plants for hydroelectric production. That's a crucial, but he also talked about ICT infrastructure. In this modern age, infrastructure is not limited to roads and railways, even though those are very, very important. ICT, to be able to string a fiber optic cable along the Eastern Corridor Road
up to
Bolgatanga, allows you not only to travel by that road, but also to convey quantum of data for transaction. And the combination of a traditional notion of infrastructure with the modern notion of the infrastructure that spurs growth, productivity, and employment is what he's referring to.
Right, Dr. Garba, I'll quickly run through some of the messages that have come in. Isaac Kinsley Eji says that JDM will succeed. Adom Evans Obin says, the economy is seriously in crisis. But anyway, I'm looking forward to teach in one of the community senior high schools. And Abuaji Williamson de Graaf said that he said nothing on fighting corruption. Abdul Muyasir Kamara says that in this 21st century, we are still battling with basic problems of social amenities like electricity and water. When do we expect to grow as a nation? Ojo Gabriel Oje says that initially I did not see the reasons behind minority boycott of the State of the Nation's address, but upon hearing statements like as His Excellency John Mahama and also the gratitude shown by the President to voters and international communities that have accorded the election as free, fair and transparent, I do not see the angle with which the minority will take those portion of speeches due to the fact that they are in court on the same. A bit too long, Ojo Gabriel, but thanks for your comments. And Isaac Gbadogo says that GM should block MP salaries until they win their case in court. Well, wishful thinking, but that's your comment, Isaac. And then Isifu Nuruddin says, Joy News, you always bring us in-depth analysis of issues as and when they happen. I've not regretted getting myself a multi-TV Digibox. Thanks so much for your educative programs. Well, Nuruddin, you could tell all your friends to also get themselves multi-TV Digiboxes so they can hear us always, anytime, radio and TV as well. And then this one from Sue Nanachirewa says, I have no lights, so I can't watch nor listen. I'm sorry for you, Sue. And Dauda Awal Mohammed Siba says, they refuse to work, but at the end, they will be signing checks for their salaries. God is watching you. This is in relation to the NPP MPs boycotting today's President State of the Nation's address. And Kaba Nelson Sipkis says, we should not always draft a beautiful State of the Nation's address, but we should make sure they are implemented. And MPP or no MPP, Kaba says, Ghana must move on without same lazy group of politicians. And Justice Arthur says, what the MPP did was bad. They should have known better. Bonti Benjamin says the statement lacks substance and was presented in a campaign mood at the time the nation is in deep crisis. Mere rhetoric and magniloquence without backing action is releasing hot air. Let's back our talk with work and action and not laziness, inefficiency and incompetent with Idebi Keke hymns. Ghana deserves better. Magniloquence, this your word is a big word, Bonti Benjamin. But thanks very much for your comment. So we've run out of time, Dr. Garba, but 1 minute to wrap up. What would you say?
Well, I think from where I sit that I saw a State of the Nation address that was uplifting, that acknowledged the challenges that we have.
Does it provide hope?
It provides incredible hope. This is a magnanimous president who continues constantly to eschew humility and to offer an olive branch to unite this country. He rounded off with a very, very emotional set of propositions about his own vision, what he believes in, and called on Ghanaians to work with him. That every 4 years, elections do occur. But the minute they finish, we should not let the acrimony of those elections to mar our imagination, to unify this nation in order to tackle the fundamental challenges that we face.
Dr. Boameh, what about you?
Fine. I have hope in the speech, because not long ago, I was saying this morning to somebody that I was seeing Mahama sitting down like this in front of TV, talking like that about our state of affairs. Now that he's in charge, I expect from him that he will deliver.
He will deliver.
Deliver to the extent that he should dwell so much on his team, because he alone cannot do it, and provide a base for action in the areas of these assemblies and the ministers. In regards to infrastructure, it's not only roads that I mentioned. I just mentioned road first.
Yeah.
Because for me, road is so crucial. It's because of road to this place that we're able to come. Look at our cocoa industry. One area where we are losing out is lack of good roads in the hinterlands. For timber, for anything, it's about hot roads.
So infrastructure is key for
The
you.
second one is energy.
Energy.
Yeah, because of this power, we are here in the night. Okay, then the next one for industry, especially for the private sector, is water.
So you
So
want,
these
Dr.
ones-
Boameh, you want to see that the president will deliver on his State of the Nation's address.
Exactly.
I'm very grateful for your time. Dr. Boameh is leading member of the Forum for Governance and Justice. And Dr. Sule Garba is also Senior Policy Advisor, Office of the President. And thanks to you for your messages and your time, making time for PM Express. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Personality Friday. Good evening.